The inaugural African Hub Agro-Dealer Development Conference took place at the Kigali Hotel in Rwanda from June the 4th to the 7th. Now, the event was aimed at showcasing the best practices, facilitating peer-to-peer knowledge sharing, and inviting collaboration among stakeholders to strengthen the inputs sector in Africa. The session provided participants with an overview of the state of fertilizer use in Africa and soil health initiatives on the continent, key trends, key challenges, and what the 10-year action plan suggests as a path to sustainable agriculture over the coming decade. Here are some excerpts.
I will just give you a brief report on status by category. So the first category is fertilizer consumption. It's definitely the case that over the past 20 years, fertilizer consumption levels in Africa have increased both in terms of application rate per hectare as well as overall fertilizer consumption. In terms of consumption, current consumption is at approximately 15 million metric tons per annum, up from approximately 8 million metric tons in 2006, so it has essentially doubled, but this is only equivalent to 3% of total world consumption. In terms of average application rates, they have also doubled. They are currently at approximately 18 to 20 kilograms per hectare, which is double the average of 8 kilograms per hectare that we were facing in 2006. Nevertheless, again, these consumption levels are way below the world average of 135 kilograms per hectare. And for the majority of countries, they are actually way below the Abuja target of 50 kilograms per hectare. So it is important to point out that these use levels are essentially still insufficient to really replace the soil nutrients that we lose every year from the soils through harvesting. And there's really an urgent need to accelerate fertilizer use in Africa in order to reach the North Star that we've heard about repeatedly, food security for the continent. In terms of fertilizer production, Africa produces about 30 million metric tons of fertilizer per annum, but again, this only accounts for about 4% of world production. Furthermore, production of this fertilizer is concentrated in only 6 countries, 4 of which are in North Africa: Algeria, Egypt, Morocco, and Tunisia. The other major producers are Nigeria and South Africa. However, there have been notably large investments to increase production capacity, particularly in Nigeria and Morocco. And there's also been an increase in the number of blending operations in sub-Saharan Africa. So in Nigeria, the private sector has invested over $4 billion to increase urea capacity, which is now sitting at about 6.5 million metric tons, and OCP is now producing over 14 million tons of phosphate fertilizers annually. Furthermore, over 140 blending plants are located across sub-Saharan Africa, and there are also 15 to 20 organic fertilizer plants across the continent. So we've definitely made strides in terms of production capacity. However, if we now turn to fertilizer trade, despite these increases in production, the majority of these fertilizers that are produced are exported from the continent. They're not being marketed to sub-Saharan Africa. Conversely, 90% of the fertilizer that is consumed on the continent is imported from outside the continent as a finished product. In comparison, we can see that 75% of the fertilizer consumed in Latin America is imported, and in South Asia, it's only 20 to 30%.
But I think from various corners around the world, and especially in Africa, there's been a much bigger understanding of the importance of having healthy soil and capable soils to ensure that the nutrients that we supply are available to the plants. And it was mentioned in the previous session as well, it's not just about feeding the soil, but it's about feeding the plants as well, which is ultimately what we're trying to achieve from an agricultural and production perspective. So, firstly, why is it important that we're looking at soil health in Africa? And you'll see on the red about 75% of the agricultural growth or production growth in Africa, at least in sub-Saharan Africa, was resulting from expansion of agricultural land or croplands into forest lands and rangelands. And many of you will know that in African agriculture, the rangelands and the forests are really important in terms of people's livelihoods and incomes as well. So we might expand the croplands for production, but we do that at the detriment of livestock production, rangelands, and also the value we get from forests. And we know that a lot of this expansion of croplands is because the soils in the croplands are degraded through nutrient mining. So there's a loss of nutrients in the soils because they're not replenished. There's a loss of organic matter. There's erosion. There's soil acidity that often increases as a result of production and so on. And what we also know is that the degradation of the soils reduces the effectiveness of any fertilizers that are applied. So in the fertilizer context and the supply context, if we supply fertilizers to farmers that have soils that are degraded and the efficiency of those fertilizers are low, that would result in lower profitability of the use of the fertilizers in terms of productivity and production, and that then can have an impact on the return of the farmers to those suppliers or hub agro dealers if they don't see the value of applying the fertilizers in the first place.
I think we know the symptoms, but we truly do not give a lot of attention to the root cause of the problem. And that is understanding the root cause of the problem and addressing the root cause of the problem is a key impetus to proper and stable solution. I also want to thank Maria for giving that very, very detailed statistics. They are very true as it is. But you agree with me that those statistics are really, really frightening. And it's beginning to show us that if we don't take prime action now, it appears we are sitting on a gunpowder that may affect today and the posterity. Well, as it relates to the presentation of my colleague Lisa, that's also very true. And I want to pitch it from where you stopped. The need to combine organic and mineral fertilizer. I mean, it is clear that mineral fertilizer is not the devil, as some thoughts, some group, think it is. Neither organic fertilizer the saint. The two, we have to work together if we are going to get to where we want to be as it relates to maintaining soil and having agricultural productivity in Africa. You know, it's good to just pinpoint the nature and the properties of African soil. And you need to understand that that is the oldest soil in the world. I like to repeat this everywhere I have opportunity to talk. Soil scientists will tell you that the clay minerals from the formation of African soil, they are the low activity clay minerals. The morillonite, the smectite, the kaolinites. And so what do you call it? The organic matter content is also very low, very shallow. We are talking about organic matter, the threshold is 1.5%. Do you want to compare African soil that is having far less than that, 0.9%, to soil in Ukraine and in Russia, where they are having 40% to 60%? You can quickly Google that. You will see it. It's clear. So you can't, and we know that this organic matter is the source and the sink of plant mineral. If you pour in mineral fertilizer when the organic matter content is not optimum, it's more or less like pouring salt into a sieve and opening the tap on it. It goes away, the plant does not get it. And these are the root cause of the problem. You know, my own conclusion is that we use organic fertilizer because you already know that the nutrient content in organic fertilizer is very low, but it is rich in the colloidal properties. It is rich in humus, and we need the humus. So in Africa, my whole recommendation is that we combine the two. We apply organic fertilizer to keep the integrity of our soil in terms of humus content, and we apply mineral fertilizer to supply the nutrient need of the crop we are planting.